Tupac secretly boarded plane in disguise, leaving flight attendant completely shocked forever. Tupac Shakur knew how to command a stage, but on that chilly March morning in 1995, he was fighting to command his own presence. The world thought he was laid up in New York, slowly recovering from bullet wounds that had nearly taken his life. What they didn't know was that he'd slipped out of the spotlight and into the desert air of New Mexico. The disguise was simple: oversized hoodie, dark shades, baseball cap pulled low. Nothing flashy, just enough to dull the edges of recognition. To most people, he was a weary young man named Malik S, not the most infamous rapper in America. The airport itself was quiet, more bus station than glamorous terminal. That was the point. No paparazzi waited with flashing bulbs, no journalists sniffing for an update. Just a handful of locals, a tired gate agent, and Tupac with a duffel bag heavy enough to carry both clothes and secrets. Inside, he had nothing extravagant. A notepad swollen with scribbled verses, some folded photos of his mother, and an extra hoodie. His walk carried a slight limp, a reminder of the bullets that hadn't quite silenced him. He requested a window seat, row 17, no special treatment, no headline. For a man who had spent years amplifying his voice, anonymity now felt like freedom. The ticket had been arranged by Don, a trusted figure from his inner circle, with no traceable trail. Malik S was an alias he'd used back in demo tape days. Now it was a shield. The plane was small, one of those regional jets that rattled even while parked at the gate. Maybe 50 seats, all crammed tight. Passengers filed in slowly, some dragging duffels, others clutching fast food bags. A boy in the first row whispered to his mom that the man walking by looked like Tupac. She chuckled, brushing it off. Tupac wouldn't be flying coach in sneakers. He kept walking, head bowed. The flight was supposed to leave on time, but fate had its own sense of rhythm. A 15-minute delay stretched the boarding process. That's when she appeared, Mariah Dean. Not in her blue and white uniform, but jeans, jacket, hair pinned back hastily. Her face was tight with urgency, her name tag clipped crookedly to her coat. She explained to the gate agent that she needed to get to Los Angeles immediately. Her mother was in the hospital, off duty but still crew. Could they squeeze her in? The agent nodded and sent her down the aisle, pointing toward the empty seat beside Malik. Mariah slid into row 17, dropping her leather bag with a thud. She offered a polite smile. "Thanks for letting me squeeze in." He barely lifted his eyes. "It's fine," he muttered, his voice low and raspy, his word carrying the gravel of lived experience. She thought nothing of it at first. People on flights were tired, guarded, half in their own worlds. As the plane taxied out, Mariah tried to distract herself from worry. Her fingers kept brushing a photo of her mother tucked inside her bag. She noticed her seatmate jotting lines into a battered notebook. His grip on the pen was odd, firm, deliberate, like he was chiseling each word instead of writing it. She caught sight of a phrase before he folded the page. "When the soul gets tired, don't no fame fix that?" She tilted her head slightly, curiosity stirring. Turbulence hit a few minutes later, jolting the cabin. Passengers gasped. She instinctively clutched the armrest, her hand brushing his arm. His sleeve rode up, revealing the faint outline of a tattoo, a black crown. Something clicked in her memory. She'd seen that crown before, maybe in a magazine, maybe on an album cover. He tugged the sleeve back down quickly, eyes fixed on the clouds outside. Mariah bit her lip. She had no proof, just a growing suspicion. His voice, his energy, the way he wrote like every word was oxygen. It couldn't be. Or could it? Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the possibility that the man the world thought broken and hidden was sitting inches away, alive and quiet, carrying verses that might never be heard. The plane steadied after the turbulence, but Mariah's mind refused to calm. She stole sideways glances at the man beside her, convinced now that his hoodie and sunglasses were less about fashion and more about hiding. He wasn't like the other passengers. No phone, no idle chatter, no pretzels snapped absent-mindedly. Instead, his stillness carried weight, like he'd practiced disappearing into the noise around him. When the teenager, a few rows up, turned his headphones loud enough to leak the beat of "Dear Mama," she swore she saw his posture shift. Not a head bob, not a smile, just a subtle closing of the eyes, as though the song itself was pulling at the threads he was trying to keep hidden. She decided to test her suspicion. "Going to LA?" she asked, voice careful. He nodded, eyes still on the window. "Family or work?" He smirked faintly, a smirk that felt oddly familiar. "Neither, just trying to breathe." That line froze her. It wasn't a casual answer. It was poetry delivered as if he'd been carrying it for years. Her brother Quincy had once memorized Tupac's lines the same way, repeating them until they seeped into her own memory. The rhythm in this man's tone was identical. Her eyes drifted to his hands, calloused knuckles, faint scars, the kind you don't get from typing or desk work. They looked like the hands of someone who had fought, written, survived. She thought of Quincy again, how his bedroom walls were plastered with Tupac posters, how he'd driven her crazy, blasting "Keep Your Head Up" at full volume. Quincy was gone, taken in a car accident, but his hero might just be sitting in row 17. Mariah reached into her bag for water, her arm brushing his again. This time he didn't move away. She caught a glimpse of the notepad on his lap. The top line read, "Mama say it, I could vanish, but I ain't ghost." Her breath caught. Those weren't the words of a random traveler. Those were verses. She whispered without thinking, "You always write like that?" He turned slowly, his sunglasses slipping down just enough for her to meet his eyes, deep, weary, and familiar. "Only when people listen," he said. Before she could form her next question, another wave of turbulence shook the cabin harder. A few passengers cried out, and the man across the aisle cursed under his breath. Mariah's hand gripped her neighbor's arm tighter this time, almost out of instinct. He remained steady, calm, almost serene. "Planes like life," he murmured. "You don't control the drop, only how you land." She stared at him, stunned by the quiet wisdom in his tone. Who spoke like that except someone who had lived through storms bigger than the sky could throw? Her throat felt dry, but the words slipped out anyway. "Are you Tupac?" The question lingered between them, heavy and fragile. He didn't answer immediately. He leaned back, tapped his seatbelt buckle, then asked in return, "Would it change anything if I was?" She hesitated. "Yes. Because they said you were gone, and if you're here, everything I thought I knew is wrong." He nodded slowly. "Not everything you see is true, and not everything you miss is gone." Mariah's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but fear held her back. Still, when he pulled out a worn photograph of his mother, she knew. The edges were frayed, folded too many times, but the love in the way he held it told her more than his words ever could. "You're really him," she whispered. He sighed, voice low, airing exhaustion. "I'm just trying to make it to tomorrow." The hum of the engines filled the silence that followed. Mariah clasped her hands in her lap, unsure what to do with the truth now sitting beside her. She felt Quincy's presence in that moment, like his memory was nodding in agreement. Her brother had always said Tupac's words were more than music, they were survival. And here he was, breathing proof, hiding in plain sight on a flight no one was supposed to notice. The descent into Los Angeles came with the faint crackle of the pilot's voice reminding passengers to fasten their belts. The cabin dimmed, tray tables snapped upright, and the hum of anticipation filled the narrow rows. In row 17, tension was heavier than recycled air. A man in a suit across the aisle had been staring for far too long, whispering to his seatmate while pretending to scroll on his tablet. His eyes flickered between the hooded figure by the window and the phone he clutched in his hand. The glow of the screen betrayed his intention. He was about to take a picture. Mariah caught it first. Her instincts from years of working flights flared like alarms. She rose quickly, stepping into the aisle with quiet authority. "Sir," she said firmly, voice carrying just enough to silence the chatter nearby. "Phones must be off during descent." The man blinked, fumbling. "You were pointing your camera at another passenger," she cut in. "That's harassment. Delete it." Murmurs spread through the rows. The man's companion shifted uncomfortably. Mariah unclipped her crew ID, the silver badge glinting under the cabin lights. "I may be off duty, but federal regulations don't clock out. Delete the photo now." He hesitated, cheeks flushed with embarrassment, then muttered an apology before tucking his phone away. Passengers stared, stunned by her sudden steel. The man beside her didn't move. For the first time since boarding, Tupac looked truly shaken, not by turbulence, chance, not by risk, but by someone defending him without hesitation. He whispered, "You didn't have to do that." She slid back into her seat, keeping her voice low. "You don't deserve to be hunted, not here." For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the noise of the cabin fading behind the pounding of their thoughts. The wheels dropped from the belly of the plane with a metallic thud. Tupac reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded page from his notebook, hesitating before pressing it into her hand. She unfolded it carefully, eyes tracing the words, "If I vanish in the wind, let my words be the reason someone breathes one more day." Her throat tightened. "This isn't just music," she whispered. "It's a lifeline." He nodded once. "That's all I ever wanted it to be." A teenage girl, a few rows up, stood suddenly, wide-eyed, her gaze fixed on him. "You look just like..." Mariah shot up again, cutting her off gently but firmly. "He's not who you think." "Please sit down." The girl hesitated, then returned to her seat, casting one last look over her shoulder. Tupac exhaled slowly. "You didn't need to protect me twice." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I wasn't protecting you. Maybe I was protecting the man who saved my brother's life with his words." The wheels kissed the runway with a soft jolt, the cabin erupting in relieved applause from a few nervous travelers. Tupac stayed silent, hoodie pulled low, as Los Angeles sprawled outside the tiny windows, its light smeared across the horizon. As the rows began to empty, Mariah stayed seated, clutching the folded page. "Do I call you Malik?" she asked quietly. He gave a small laugh. "Call me whatever reminds you that Quincy mattered." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "He did. You just reminded me." When the aisle cleared, he rose, adjusting his hoodie. At the front, a flight attendant smiled politely. "Safe travels," he whispered back, always, before stepping into the jet bridge. Outside, a black sedan idled near the tarmac fence, a quiet figure waiting by the door. Tupac slid inside without looking back, vanishing into the blur of city traffic. Mariah remained on the plane, fingers pressed to the page he had given her. The words seemed to burn into her skin. "To those who live quiet but feel loud, I wrote for you. To those who scream inside but smile out loud, I bled for you." Weeks later, a slim book appeared on shelves under the name MS, filled with poems and verses no one officially claimed. Readers whispered it was him. No proof, no interviews, just words that felt like survival. And tucked inside Mariah's carry-on, the page he'd given her stayed folded and safe, a reminder that sometimes legends don't fade, they just move quietly among us, waiting to be heard again.